Hi there, it's V with Crafting Daily Dose, and I'm excited to be guest designing for the Pear Blossom Press blog today. I've got a really special card for you. When you open it up, there's a pop-up display frame, and if you press on this big star, it lights up. Now, this type of pop-up was inspired by Jennifer McGuire, and I've got a link to that video. But I also decided it would be fun to add an extra element. And since I'm using a moon image, it's perfect for the halo lights, which are arranged in a ring. Everything is pre-wired for you, so you don't have to build a circuit, and I'm excited to show you how to do it. For this project, I'm starting with a full sheet of Night of Navy cardstock, and I'll walk you through how to trim it down for the 3 pieces that we need. I have a 3.5-inch square of basic white cardstock and a 3.5-inch square of vellum cardstock. The stamp set is To the Moon, and I'll be using one of the layering circle dies with it. I'll be stamping with basic gray, and I'll also use it for ink blending along with Night of Navy and Blackberry Bliss. There'll be some embossing, so for that I need Versamark ink and my white embossing powder along with a heat tool. Start with that sheet of Night of Navy cardstock and put it in portrait orientation. We're going to cut it halfway along the short side, so that's 4¼ inches. I'm moving my scoring blade out of the way, and I use that darker blade, which is for cutting. Set the other half aside for now and turn this piece 90 degrees. We've got some scoring to do along the long side. Don't worry, all of these measurements will be in the blog post. Move that cutting blade safely out of the way. Use the lighter blade, which is for scoring. We're scoring at 5 3/8, 5 1/2, 9 5/8, and 9 3/4. So we've made our 4 score lines, with that last one being at 9 3/4. The one previous to that was at 9 5/8. Go back to that one. Here we're going to do a partial cut from 1 1/4 down to 3 inches. And for that, I'm looking at the measurements along my guide here. I'm moving the scoring blade out, moving the cutting blade in place. I'm at 1 1/4, and I want to go down to 3 inches. So this is what it looks like. Now from our other half piece, we're going to turn it this way so that the long side is at the top, and we're going to trim this down to 6½ inches. Hang on to this piece. We're going to do some scoring on this one, starting at 1 1/4 inches. And 5 3/8. We've got our last little bit here, and we're going to trim that down. I want it to be 2½ inches wide, so let's cut it down here. Turn it 90 degrees. We're going to score at 7/8 of an inch. And then at 1 1/8. And then finally, we will take it to 2 3/8 and cut it. So our completed piece looks like this. I'm stamping my vellum piece first because it's going to take a lot longer to dry. I've got my foam mat in place. This comes from my Stamparatus, and I like to use it when I'm using clear photopolymer stamps. Here's the moon image, and this is basic gray ink. I'm going to fold these now, starting with the smallest one. It's got 2 score lines, and both of them are going to be mountain folds. The medium-sized piece also has 2 score lines, and both of those are mountain folds. And then on the large piece, we've got 4 score lines, including one that has a cut partway through it. For now, I'm only going to fold the second score line from the top. So it's the set of 2 that are close together. It's the lower one of those. And the reason I'm not folding these yet is because eventually it's going to create a stepped shape, but we're going to need to do some ink blending, and it's harder to do if this area is not even. So I'm only folding this second score line for now, and it's a mountain fold. Now all of these are going to have some heat embossing, so I'm going to go ahead and put some anti-static powder on them. On this piece, I'm going to put it in this central panel here between the line that we just folded and the line where the cut is. On this middle piece, now be careful because these 2 panels look very much alike, but actually one is a little bit bigger than the other. This top one is going to be 1 1/4 inches, and you can check that against your grid paper. The bottom one is only 1 1/8 inch, and the stamping that we're going to do is going to be on this lower section, so I'm going to go ahead and put my powder here. Now on this one, the top panel is more obviously bigger than the lower one, so you're less likely to get this confused, but we are going to be stamping on both of those, so go ahead and apply powder on everything. I'm stamping with clear photopolymer stamps, so I like to have the little foam mat from my Stamparatus down underneath the paper. On the larger top panel, I put Always Reach for the Stars, and on the lower panel, I put 1 large star and several small ones. On this one, I check to make sure that I'm stamping on the lower portion next to the slightly smaller panel, and I put Love You to the Moon and back. Here I'm doing the crescent moon, some constellations, and some smaller stars. Remember to change up your angle as you go along so that there's more variety. Once I'm done with stamping, I'll go ahead and put on the embossing powder. That Versamark ink stays wet for a long time, so you don't have to rush through this part. I put a coffee filter down, but you can use any sort of scrap paper. This is just to catch the excess and make it easier to pour back into my container. So I poured some on and then I'm just tapping off the excess. I also keep a dry brush that helps me to brush off some more. And if I've accidentally brushed off more than I intended to, I can just add back more powder. Here the designs are really close to one another, so I'm using tweezers to hold it so I don't accidentally put my fingers over the design. I'm tapping and brushing off the excess, but I'm not too worried about this piece being perfect since any extra stray embossing powder can just be considered as bonus stars. After the powder is on, I will go ahead and bring in my heating tool. I'm going to preheat it first and start working from the bottom. That way, it's less likely that I'm going to blow around extra powder before it's hot enough to melt. For smaller pieces like this, I use tweezers to protect my fingers, but otherwise, all the pieces are going to be heated the same way. I didn't speed that up, so you can tell that it really doesn't take long before you notice a change and the powder is melted. And I'll go ahead and do the other pieces in the same way. On this piece, I'm going to use my layering circle die. This is the second to largest of the plain ones, and it's about 2 3/4 inches across. I'm going to center it horizontally and put it kind of halfway between this top crease and where my words are. And I'll get that cut out. Once my circle is cut out, I'm going to turn it to the back and I'm going to put Stampin' Seal all the way around this edge. Once that's done, I'm going to bring in my moon that I had stamped earlier, and I'm just double checking to make sure that that ink is dry. So this is the top surface. I'm going to turn it upside down as well, and I'm going to center it over this hole. Now, a couple of things to notice here. The top edge of my vellum crosses over this fold, and I don't want that, so I'm going to trim that off. We don't want the vellum interfering with that crease. And then the other thing that I noticed is that because I didn't stamp this perfectly centered, there's more of the vellum on this side than on that side. So I've got a little bit of adhesive exposed here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back my anti-static powder, and I'm going to cover that so that it's not sticky anymore. For pop-ups, we do not want stray adhesive because that's going to get our card stuck and it's not going to open properly. If you don't have the anti-static powder to cover that, you can just put like another piece of scrap paper there, just as long as that area is not sticky. So now this piece is ready. Now I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending on this piece, and I'm doing it on top of my silicone mat. I'm also using a little bit of washi tape to mask off the area past this crease because I don't want to get any extra ink there. I'll be using a little bit of Basic Gray, Blackberry Bliss, and Night of Navy. I've got a little bit of scrap paper, and I'm using daubers. I'm starting with the Basic Gray, and I'm just tapping a little bit of the ink on, and then I'm dabbing most of it off. Just using circular motions right around the edge here. It's best to start out slow and be conservative about adding in ink. You can always make it darker, but it's really hard to try to take that ink away. I really like blending onto colored cardstock. It's almost like you're cheating because you have such a head start already. Now that I'm done with my front panel, I'm going to go ahead and finish folding the other creases. So remember we had this mountain fold, and then the score line before it is also going to be a mountain fold. Now these are very close together, and when you have that, sometimes it can be hard to get that to fold. What I like to do is to put my finger underneath that and use my other hand to sort of roll the paper down until it finds that crease. And just take your time with this. Once you have it going, then you can go ahead and finish making that crease, and then we'll reinforce it with the bone folder. Now, this crease here that has the cut through it, this is going to be a mountain fold as well. And then this very last crease on the bottom, that's going to be a valley fold. And same as before, if it's tricky to get it to fold, support it with one hand and then use your other hand to sort of roll that paper until it finds the crease. Now, when you look at it from the side, you can see that it creates this little shape here. There's a thickness in this portion, and then it meets together flat down here. I'm going to put in the halo light, and it comes with this battery. You can see that there's a plus sign here, and there's a plus sign on the top of this battery compartment. So I'm putting the plus sign on the battery face up, and I'm going to press the button to test it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it this way, and I am going to slip it through that slot that I had created earlier. And it's just going to pop right on through to the other side. So if we fold this flap down, you can see that's where the battery unit is now. So I'm going to put this so that the battery is just on top of this. I want the light as low down as I possibly can get it. Now we need to go ahead and adhere it down. For the other type of easy lights, I usually use the tear and tape double-sided adhesive, but for this I'm going to use glue dots because it's not always easy to get the tape to go around this shape. So I'm basically just kind of wedging the glue dot beneath here, lifting the light up a little bit, putting in a dot, and then adhering it back down. Oh, I can see that this shifted, so I need to readjust. I'm using the tip of my tweezers to push in any stray glue dots. And I'm checking around with my fingers to make sure that I don't feel anything sticky, because remember, that is the enemy of a pop-up. So now our light is installed. We're going to fold down this flap and just test it. Perfect. So now I'm going to install this piece, and I'm putting Stampin' Seal along this top panel. You can also use tear and tape or glue. Notice that I put my adhesive right along the edge and right up next to this crease. Now this is going to match up with this panel here on our card front. So I'm going to line that up. So the edge of the card front goes up right against this crease. And here's what it looks like from the other side. you can see that the edge of the outside part ends right before the step off here. Now we're going to put adhesive on this bottom flap. And just like before, I'm going to put it right next to the crease and right at the edge. Once I have my adhesive here, I'm going to fold the panel down at this crease so it lies flat, and then I'm going to bring the back of the card up to meet it. Now when we open our card, that panel pops up, and our button here to activate the light is accessible, but we don't want to make it quite that obvious, so let's go ahead and cover it up. That's what this piece is for. So the shorter piece is going to face the inside of the card, like this. And the reason that I had stamped that star there is so that it could be the little indication of where to press the button. And then the piece is going to wrap around, and you'll see a panel in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and sort of wedge this lower piece in as far as I can get it to go. And then I'm going to put some foam tape on either side of it. I like the foam adhesive sheets for this because it's easy to cut them into any size or shape that you want. And I oftentimes do projects that require a double layer of foam, so I've taken some of these and just adhere them together back to back so that it's 2 layers, and then I'll cut out my shape from this. So I'm centering this horizontally, and then I've got a double layer thickness of foam adhesive sheet that I've cut into a little strip. And I'll trim that down. And then I'll put some glue over this area. Double check to make sure that I've pushed this in as far as it can go. And then I'm going to fold this over itself. Now, this middle panel here is going to be sort of the vertical height. And so I just want this crease to line up with this edge. So I'll give you a closer look at that, as well as from the side, so you can see what that looks like. Now, once you have this in place, go ahead and open it up and check it out from the inside. Make sure that you don't have a big gap here. If you do, take the time to adjust it now before the glue has set. Otherwise, you're ready to go ahead and put the panel down here for the greeting. Now I'm using cardstock that's a really nice weight, and so this is able to stand up on its own. If you're using different cardstock and having trouble getting yours to stand up, you might try putting an extra layer of cardstock on the back of the card. That's going to help weight it down and make the pop-up more stable to stand. So that's our finished card. We've got a fun story scene on the outside, and a pop-up on the inside that can stand up for display and light up. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity and that you'll have a chance to try it out for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, have a great day.